It is Tuesday, the 19th of January 2021. The news is read by Merrano Isaacs. Good morning. Citing what she described as unmeritorious submissions from the lawyers representing petitioners, Chief Justice Acting Roxanne George has ruled that the Elections Petition 99 of 2020 is invalid on the basis that the second named respondent, David Granger, was served the petition after the prescribed time for service would have expired. Through this petition, petitioners Monica Thomas and Brina Nurse had argued that the elections were unlawfully conducted and or that the results were affected or might have been affected by unlawful acts or omissions. Their intention as such was for the court to nullify the outcome of the March 2nd, 2020 general and regional elections and to declare that President Dr. Irfan Ali is occupying the seat of office illegally. The Chief Justice, however, struck out this petition since it was not filed in consonance with the rules outlined in the National Assembly Validity of Elections Act. It is the entrenched principles of elections law that the provision regarding timing must be strictly complied with, as non-adherence to the requisite timelines or timeliness was held by a court to result in the nullification of elections petition. Justice George, in her ruling, said there is a plethora of cases in the English-speaking Caribbean which confirm that non-adherence to the provision requiring service of all the required documents within the statutory time would result in petition being nullified and dismissed. This was the case of Joseph and Brown, 1994, Mohabir and Coffey, 2015, Joseph and Reynolds, 2012, and Brown and Gibson, 1994. Petition 99 of 20, which was filed on September 15th, 2020, should have been served on Granger 5 days thereafter. However, according to an affidavit by Nurse, it was served on Mr. Granger on September 28th. It was on those grounds that Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Anil Nandlal had filed an application to have this petition struck out since it does not comply with Section 2 of the National Assembly Validity of Elections Act. The initial affidavits of service were filed by petitioners on September 29th, but those affidavits, which were all dated September 24th, 2020, strangely stated that service to the second respondent was effected on September 25th, 2020. To bolster Guyana's fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, a portable field hospital, replete with equipment to treat critically ill patients, provided by Qatar, will arrive today and will be set up at the West Demerara Regional Hospital in Region 3. Last year, President Irfan Ali engaged the Emir of Qatar, His Royal Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, where a commitment was made to provide Guyana with a portable field or military hospital and ventilators. These are expected to help treat Guyana's COVID-19 patients. On Monday, during his daily COVID-19 update, Minister of Health Dr. Frank Anthony highlighted that the hospital will arrive in Guyana sometime this week, instead of today, January 19th, when it was previously expected. The hospital is equipped with beds for COVID-19 patients and ventilators and monitors necessary for patients who require intubation. Minister Anthony highlighted that the ministry will be seeking to establish the hospital in the compound of the West Demerara Hospital. Around the world, as existing hospitals have quickly been overwhelmed, governments have been forced to increase capacity by erecting these field hospitals. These hospitals, which look like large enclosed tents, have been erected in fields, parking lots, parks, and other spaces globally. A fire at Lot 57010 Field, Cummings Lodge, Greater Georgetown, on Monday afternoon claimed the life of 68-year-old Lionel Kite, a pensioner who reportedly locked himself inside the house since Sunday because he did not want to visit the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation GPHC to treat his illness. The fire, which destroyed completely the one-flat wooden house, erupted at around 16 hours 20. The house was one of two in the yard and was owned by Coral Bell. She was renting to Kite, who lived alone while she resides in the second house. Bell told the newspaper that she was watching television when she heard a loud sound that emanated from the back house. Upon investigating, Bell noticed the fire and the roof had already caved in. According to Bell, when she realized that Kite was still inside the house, she raised an alarm and neighbors quickly rushed over. They formed a bucket brigade until the fire service arrived some 30 minutes later. Bell opined that the fire may have started from the stove, as she assumed that Kite may have been cooking. After the fire subsided, Kite's charred remains were discovered in the kitchen. Bell recalled that the last time she saw her neighbor was Monday morning, when she gave him some soup through his window. Bell said Kite was sick, but he was hesitant to visit the GPHC because he was scared of contracting the deadly COVID-19 virus. She described Kite as very loving and stated that although he is not related to her, the absence of his presence will be missed by her and her family, who have grown close to him over the 3 years he resided there. Investigations are continuing into the cause of the fire. And now in regional news, Kingston, Jamaica. Enhanced operating protocols and procedures have been proposed to improve the implementation of the ship rider agreement between the United States and Jamaica, under which both countries cooperate to curtail illicit maritime drug trafficking. This follows an incident in October 2020 where 4 Jamaican men aboard the Jamaican-registered vessel Lady Lala were detained after the boat was intercepted, its cargo suspected by U.S. Coast Guard, and items allegedly found to contain a type of narcotic drug or psychotropic substance. Following the detention of the men, the Lady Lala was destroyed on the grounds of representing a danger to navigation, pursuant to the provisions of the Shipwright Agreement and United Nations Convention Against Illicit Trafficking in Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances, as well as standard maritime practices. However, on December 15th, the U.S. Southern District Court dismissed charges brought against the 4 Jamaicans on the grounds of lack of evidence. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade was only made aware of this development on December 28th from media reports. The government took immediate action to have the men returned to Jamaica as quickly as possible. They have been scheduled for repatriation on January 28, 2021, on the order of deportation. The ministry, through diplomatic communication with the U.S. Embassy, worked to ensure the return of the 4 men to Jamaica on December 31st on a regular commercial flight. In a statement during the sitting of the Senate on Friday, January 15th, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, said new operating protocols and procedures have been proposed following a meeting with the relevant U.S. and Jamaican stakeholders to further review the operational procedures associated with the Shipriders Agreement implementation. And now international news. U.S. President-elect Joe Biden has moved to dismiss a new White House decree on COVID travel rules as Donald Trump enters his final full day in office. In one of his latest orders, Mr. Trump had tried to end travel ban for visitors from much of Europe and Brazil. Mr. Biden's spokeswoman said now is not the time to be easing travel measures. Joe Biden will take office at around midday on Wednesday, although much of the spotlight is on Mr. Trump's final moves, including presidential pardons. Security is intense in Washington, D.C., ahead of the inauguration ceremony. Thousands of National Guard Reserve soldiers have been deployed in the wake of the storming of the Capitol building by a pro-Trump mob on the 6th of January that left 5 people dead. The FBI had earlier warned of possible protests across the nation by right-wing extremists emboldened by the invasion. Joe Biden and his wife Jill are expected to travel to Washington from their home in Wilmington, Delaware on Tuesday. A huge snowstorm has struck a highway in northern Japan, causing a 130-car pileup, killing 1 person and injuring 10. The storm blanketed a stretch of the Tohoku Expressway in Miyagi Prefecture at around noon or 3 o'clock GMT on Tuesday. Some 200 people have been caught up in the pileup, and the rescuers are currently at the scene, officials said. Japan has been hit by severe snowstorms in recent weeks, with some parts of the country seeing double the average expected snowfall. Images from the expressway show the sheer scale of the pileup. Authorities had enforced a 500-kilometer or 31-mile speed limit on the road due to visibility. There was a maximum wind speed of about 100 kilometers or 62 miles per hour at the time of the incident, local weather officials said. Those who were involved have been given drinking water and food and have been provided with blankets to keep warm, NHK News reports in Japanese. The snow has affected some of Japan's high-speed railway network, with a number of train services in the Tohoku region cancelled. According to local media, the region is expected to record up to 40 centimeters or 15 inches of snow in the next 24 hours. And now we turn to the world of sport. Since the outbreak of COVID-19, which has plunged the sporting fraternity into uncertainty, there has been a fight to cautiously counter and integrate sport with the pandemic guidelines. Locally, some sports have been granted permission to resume activities bounded by the pandemic parameters, and some have just remained dormant since no on-field activities can be allowed. The Guyana Table Tennis Association, GTTA, has been using the downtime to carefully calculate the next move that will benefit the sport and its players. With most of the international events that are attended by Guyana being provisionally cancelled, it has given the GTTA time to refocus their efforts to better construct a smoothly functioning association. President of the GTTA, Godfrey Monroe, during an interview said that it was very fortunate, or rather unfortunate, that the pandemic halted a lot of plans, but the association has forged ahead under the pandemic guidelines to cover important groundwork in other countries. India pulled off an astonishing run chase to inflict Australia's first defeat at the Gabba since 1988, win the fourth test by 3 wickets, and take one of the all-time great series. Needing 328, a Brisbane record run chase, the injury-hit tourists got home with 3 overs to spare. Shubman Gill made 91 and Rishabh Pant were unbeaten on 89. They win the series 2-1, keeping the Border Gavaskar they won in Australia 2 years ago. It is perhaps one of the finest Test Series wins by any away side, especially given the list of players unavailable to India by the time the final match was played. That included captain and talisman Virat Kohli, who only played in the first Test before departing to be at the birth of his first child. A host of fast bowlers and the first-choice spin pair, Ravi Chandran Ashwin and Ravindra Jadeja. In addition to the absent players, India somehow recovered from being bowled out for 36, their lowest total in Test cricket, in losing the series opener by 8 wickets. 2 Australian Open tennis players have tested positive for COVID-19 after arriving in the city of Melbourne amid growing controversy over the event. A third case involving a non-playing participant, according to the State of Victoria's Chief Health Officer. Some 1,200 people, including players, staff and officials, have flown into Australia for the tournament, which begins on the 8th of February. But a row over quarantine rules has cast a shadow over the upcoming event. Some players have expressed frustration about being confined to hotel rooms full-time, while other rivals are not. And some residents in Melbourne, a city which endured one of the world's longest lockdowns last year, have their own concerns about the potential COVID risk posed by the tournament. Positive cases on 3 flights have forced 72 players into full quarantine, meaning they have to isolate full-time in their hotel for 14 days instead of being allowed outside to train like other participants. It has angered some players and led world number 1 Novak Djokovic to lobby authorities to relax quarantine rules for players, including shorter periods. The suggestions earned him criticism from Australian player Nick Kyrgios and were rebuffed by Victoria state authorities, who want to keep infections at very low levels. State Premier Daniel Andrews said the measures were necessary to protect the public and tennis stars would get no special treatment. And finally, to end this newscast, this story. A woman in Egypt was briefly detained after being accused of baking indecent cakes, local media say. The cakes, topped with genitalia and underwear, fashioned out of fondant icing, were eaten at a birthday party at an exclusive Cairo sports club. After photographs went viral, the baker was arrested and later released on $319 or £234 bail. She is said to have denied making the sexually suggestive icing. A top religious body warned that such baked goods were forbidden by Islam. Dar al-Iftar wrote on Facebook, the products featuring sexual representations were an assault on the value system and a crude abuse of society. Several women who attended the birthday party are also reportedly being investigated, while the Ministry of Youth and Sports is looking into the involvement of the club that hosted the private gathering. And that's your newscast this Tuesday morning, the 19th of January 2020, with special credits to Guyana Chronicle, Caribbean News Global, and the BBC. For these stories and more, do visit our website at www.realfmgy.com.
You're listening to